As far as the book itself goes, it's a good book. It's a great memoir. It definitely gives you a very good idea of Ron Miscavige Sr.'s life, how he got into Scientology, what he was looking for, where his head was at, and how he got convinced through, actual good works that Scientology did with him, with less so with his ex-wife, and with his family, with David. There's a story that he relates about David Miscavige and his asthma as a child, and how Scientology didn't cure it, but certainly reduced its traumatic effects on him as a child, and almost made it totally go away. And that's pretty interesting. That's an interesting story. And I'm not going to sit here and refute it and say it didn't happen or, something like that, because it very clearly did. That leads me, of course, to the fact that there's a lot of, I guess what I would say is apologetics towards Scientology as a subject within the book. There's a lot of commentary and talking about how Scientology as a subject is basically a good thing. He clarified, I watched Ron Miscavige give an interview the other night on Seth Andrews' news show, and Miscavige clearly stated that Scientology at its lower levels is pretty good stuff, but the upper levels is pretty much a sham. And I can see why he would say that. And I've said, similar things in that you can get results with some of the common sense principles and some of the lower level stuff, because it hooks you and gives you some fairly simple problem-solving techniques and a fairly workable therapeutic technique if used in a limited way. I'm talking about Dianetics right now, or basic simple Scientology processes, right? These things have a limited degree of workability on a limited number of people, not universal. And Ron Miscavige Sr. was one of those people, right? So he sings its praises. But he also takes care, and I really appreciated this in the book, to cite the fact that L. Ron Hubbard drew from lots of different sources that came before him and didn't credit those sources. And that is very, very true. And he actually named some sources that I hadn't heard of before myself, which I actually liked, because I'm gonna be looking some of those up. So it's not fully coming across as the work of an independent Scientologist or somebody who is eager for people to do Scientology or something like that. It reads like an honest account of somebody who really feels like they got gains from the subject, wants people to know that that's how he feels about it, and yet at the same time understands that it's not everything L. Ron Hubbard said it was. L. Ron Hubbard was not everything he said he was, and the subject has devolved into something under David Miscavige, which definitely should be stayed away from. He does make those points pretty clear in the book, so I can't really knock him for speaking his version of the truth, his idea of his life and his views on Scientology, and I don't begrudge him for any of that at all. There's not a lot of new information in the book in regards to Scientology or its abuses. There's some new information in the book about David Miscavige's life, some of his formative early years. It's interesting. It's very interesting stuff. There's nothing really in the book about Shelley Miscavige. Ron claims that he was not really very close to them, didn't know a lot about it, didn't know she disappeared, that sort of thing. I wonder, it sort of strains my credulity a little bit that he was that hands-off about it, but then again, I can see how that could be that way. So I'm not calling him out or saying that, that there should have been more or something like that. Not at all. If he didn't know, he didn't know. And he also does take some time to note that David Miscavige was even trying to con him a little bit at certain times, right? Because Ron says that he was a gregarious talker up at the Int base for Scientology. He'd go around and he'd tell people things, he'd tell stories, he talks all the time. He is a talker. I know that from my own personal experience with him. And so a couple times David Miscavige tried to pull a fast one on him to try to get him to spread some rumors about David Miscavige, and Ron kind of saw through him, and that was kind of funny. I did ask, I put up, after I read the book, I put up on Facebook if anybody had any questions they wanted me to answer in this video. And so I got a few here, so I'm going to take those up. Was Ron RPF'd at any point? Did he go to the Rehabilitation Project Force or ever end up in the hole or something like that? And the answer is no, he did not. There was a question about any new info or Shelley. There was also a question where they said, I'm curious as to how David Miscavige was even able to hand over $100,000 when SO members in general are destitute. And the answer to that question is in the book, and it did because Ron Miscavige Sr. asked his son after he took off from Scientology, he wrote to him and he said, can you help me out at all? I'm out here in the real world now. And David Miscavige sent him $100,000. Apparently that money came from an inheritance that David Miscavige got from Ron's ex-wife, Loretta. It didn't come from church money. So that's good to know. David Miscavige takes plenty from the church for his own lifestyle and his own life choices, but he didn't apparently pass that on to Ron Miscavige, and I have no particular reason to question that or wonder if that's true or not. One of the stories another question here is, what is DM's lifestyle and how is it perceived by others in the Sea Org? I can tell you from myself, when I was in the Sea Org, that we thought that David Miscavige deserved everything he got, and we thought that he worked harder than any of us, and we thought that his nice suits and all that sort of thing were just something that were purchased by the Sea Org, and I didn't know about his personal chef, personal groomer, personal this, personal that. I didn't know about any of that when I was in the Sea Org, but if I had, I would have thought, well, he's, COB, so he deserves it. And that's kind of how Sea Org members view David Miscavige. There was one story that Ron relates in the book where David Miscavige is in his office talking to Ron, and they're, just talking about whatever, and somebody comes in and gives David Miscavige his pay envelope, and it's got $50 in it, just like everybody else gets, right? And I think Ron said that he thought that was staged for his benefit, so that Ron would go around and tell everybody, hey, the guy just makes $50 a week like the rest of us, right? But Ron Miscavige said, yeah, I didn't really fall for that. So there is that. Now there's a question here, maybe what your sense is about how hard he has tried to get through to his son, how far gone he thinks his son is, and how similar or different his experience is from that of other parents of Scientologists. Those are interesting points. I think that Ron Miscavige's experience with David as a Scientology parent before he got involved in Scientology is fairly typical. He cares about his kids. He wants them to do well. Ron Miscavige bought into Scientology hook, line, and sinker, moving his family to England for a while in order to do services at St. Hill back in the 70s, and really diving in with both feet. So I don't know that is actually very typical. I think most Scientologists as public don't get that far into it. And then he let David Miscavige go off and join the Sea Org when he was 16 years old. That's pretty liberal, right? The mother was kind of in shock. Loretta was kind of in shock about the whole thing. But Ron Miscavige is kind of like, yeah, well, that's what he wants to do. And he thought Scientology was good stuff. And of course, this is in 1976 or something, way before the internet or any idea of what was really going on with the Sea Organization or with L. Ron Hubbard. So, I don't know. It seemed to me that it was a bit pretty lot of latitude there that he gave to his kid. So I don't think that was a very typical experience. But that's that. As far as getting through to his son and whatnot, I think he's definitely done as much as you could be expected to do. He talks about it in the book. And as far as his views of David Miscavige go, well, Ron Miscavige Sr. cites the book, The Sociopath Next Door. And I think that's pretty telling. What is DM's Achilles heel? Now, this was asked to me on Facebook, and Dan Kuhn actually answered his psychosis, and I actually could not agree more. I think that is exactly David Miscavige's Achilles heel. He is not really capable of fully rational thought, as far as I can tell. That's my opinion, you know. But his PR foot bullet, ham-fisted approaches to silencing critics, and his emphasis on the very worst of Scientology's policies, such as disconnection and dead agenting and the fair gaming and all the rest, I think speak volumes about where his head's at. And these are the things that are bringing Scientology down. And you can go all the way back to my first videos on that, where I talk about, what's wrong with Scientology and why Scientology is destroying itself. And those videos basically relate the things that David Miscavige has emphasized about Scientology over the years that have made it its worst possible interpretation. Does the book go much into Scientology's disconnection policies? From my perspective, this is probably the most evil practice that Scientology engages in. Yes, extensively and in detail, and that is what this whole thing is all about, is the disconnection. That's what prompted, one of the key things that prompted Ron Miscavige Sr. to write this book in the first place, is he was disconnected from his own family, and he's the church leader's son, or father rather, sorry. So that again, that tells you quite a bit about just how far down this organization has gone, and how far gone David Miscavige is. And then what's it say about Lisa Marie Presley? Well, it says a bit at the end. She's featured very prominently, and that's that's a very good thing that she's featured in there, because she played a role in trying to help Ron Miscavige Sr. She played a big role, and as far as I'm concerned, she should have been on 2020, because she was definitely going to bat for him.